Hello, everyone. I'm carnivore coach Parveen, hosting for Revero Success Story podcast, where we explore the question, how has the carnivore diet changed your life? Today, I would like to welcome Stephen. Stephen healed his ulcerative colitis on keto and seborrheic dermatitis on carnivore. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
Hi. So why don't we start with just explaining what ulcerative colitis is and seborrheic dermatitis, just to let our viewers understand what those two conditions mean. And then you can go into your background and what health conditions you suffered as a result of these two conditions. Go ahead.
Okay, ulcerative colitis is when you develop ulcers in the colon. And then seborrheic dermatitis is when you develop inflammation of the skin, and then sinusitis is just inflammation of the nasal passage. And I ended up getting those in 2009. So 2009, I started developing symptoms. I was getting a lot of blood in my stool, and it started out with just a little bit, and then it kind of got more and more pronounced as the months went on. And then in 2010, it got to the point where it was really, really bad that I had to go see a gastroenterologist. And I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in March of 2010. And then with the seborrheic dermatitis and the chronic sinusitis, a lot of times people that develop ulcerative colitis, those two often accompany it. And luckily for me, I was able to get both of those as well. So what I did was I started out, that's basically when I started really getting into holistic health, because up until then I focused mostly on personal training, and then I became a holistic health coach after I got diagnosed, just to help other people.
Oh, good for you. So what approach did you take when you first started for healing of your, when did you come across the carnivore diet? When did you discover that approach to healing?
The first time that I tried the carnivore diet was 2013, but I didn't even know what it was. I just started eating meat only. And the reason that I did that was in 2010, when I officially got my diagnosis, I was introduced to specific health practitioners. One of them was Paul Chek, who is somebody who I still listen to this day, and I incorporate a lot of his teachings into my coaching practice. And with Paul Chek, he had used the metabolic typing diet from William Walcott, and he had an abbreviated version of the questionnaire in his book. So I ended up doing the William Walcott version of the metabolic typing diet, and I discovered that I was a protein type. So I started incorporating a lot more high-fat foods into my diet. And I also, at that point, I was doing a combination of paleo, and I didn't really know what keto was at the time. I just knew that when 80% of my diet came from fat, I felt my best. So I was doing keto without realizing it, and paleo was really the one thing that I was doing. And then in 2013, I had decided that I just wanted to try seeing what would happen if I ate meat only, because I felt better the less carbs that I consumed. So what I did, there was an organic grocery store right by my house, and they had just opened up. So I ended up going there, and they had a sale on whole chickens. And at the time, I ended up starting a new job. So because I had started a new job, I didn't have any clients, so my income was a little bit lower. So I thought, okay, they had rotisserie chickens on sale for $10 each, which if you're in the States, that probably doesn't seem like too inexpensive, but over here it's quite inexpensive. And literally for 2 months, all I did was have a whole chicken every single day for 2 months, and it was the best I had ever felt. And that was my first foray into the carnivore diet. Again, had no idea what it was. I just knew that when I eliminated carbohydrates, I felt amazing. Then fast forward to 2015, I wanted to try and experiment with something else. And around the winter time, my digestion would always get a little bit sluggish. So I wanted to try experimenting with something like the vegan diet, see how that would help me out. And in January of 2015, I told myself I was going to do it for 3 months, see how I felt. So the first 2 weeks felt absolutely great, no issues with my stomach. And then from there, my health just rapidly deteriorated. I was getting a lot more symptoms of the ulcerative colitis. I was getting really, really nauseous, really, really bloated. I noticed that I was getting a lot weaker. I was also getting some inflammation in my joints, and I just wasn't really feeling that good. So after the 3 months, I decided to call it quits, and then I went back to the carnivore diet again. And within 3 to 4 days, every single negative side effect that I was experiencing from the vegan diet, it completely disappeared while doing the carnivore diet. And I was doing that for 2 months. And then after 2 months, I started incorporating a little bit more vegetables once again, but it was very infrequent. Once a week, once every couple of weeks, I would throw in some broccoli or some salad. And then I noticed that when I would have salad, I would end up within less than 5 minutes, go to the washroom and it would be in the toilet, completely undigested. And I'm not exaggerating. Literally, I would have just a romaine lettuce salad, and within 5 minutes, it was just in the toilet. So from that point on, from 2015, I really reduced my carbohydrates even more than I had up until that point, to where it was once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks, I would toss in some vegetables. But for the most part, it was a meat-based diet. And then in 2020, so last year, I decided that I was going to just try a new diet for every 3 months. And then every 3 months, I would report back and let people know how exactly I was feeling. And I tried experimenting with a vegetarian diet on my non-workout days and then carnivore on my workout days. And I noticed that on the vegetarian days, I was getting really bloated. I was getting weak. I was also getting a lot more sore from my workouts than I normally would. And my seborrheic dermatitis and my sinusitis were getting really bad as well. So I ended up cutting it short 1 month. And then March 1st of 2020 was when I decided to do the carnivore diet. And within 3 to 4 days, once again, everything disappeared. So the sinusitis was no longer an issue. The seborrheic dermatitis was no longer an issue. The ulcerative colitis hadn't really been an issue since 2010 when I went on paleo and keto. And then the original plan was just to try it for 3 months, and then after 3 months, try something new and do that for the entire year of 2020. But after the first 3 months, I thought, you know what, I'm feeling amazing right now. No point in changing it. So I'm just going to keep doing it until it no longer works. And yeah, I've been strict ever since, haven't strayed from it.
That's great. I really like that you shared that, because I think I make that suggestion as a coach as well, is that it's really good to just try different ways of eating and just really see how you feel and commit to it for 3 months. So I'm really glad that you had a positive experience with that and you really found the right diet for you. I mean, I've done the same thing, and I had a similar experience as you. So that was really interesting to hear. So how would you describe how you eat now? Like, what are you, like, specifically, what kind of meals are you planning? What does the day look like for you in how you eat?
So the last couple months, I went back to 1 meal a day. And I've done it in the past as well. This was back in 2018. I was doing 1 meal a day, but I structured it differently. When I was doing it in 2018, I would do my 1 meal for breakfast, and then I would fast throughout the rest of the day. And my biggest issue is I eat out of boredom, not even necessarily because I'm hungry. So if I'm at home with nothing to do, then I'm going to want to snack on everything that's in sight, even if I'm not hungry. So I decided this time around that I would do my 1 meal a day at the end of the day before I go to bed. And the reason being was, even if I do end up snacking at night out of boredom, I'm not going to be able to snack quite as much because I'm going to be full from the meal that I ate. So what I'm doing right now is I'll do my 1 meal a day after I get home from work, which usually ends up being anywhere from 9 to 11 o'clock at night. I end up eating depending on what time I finish work. And in terms of the meals, it kind of alternates every single day. One day I'll have sirloin steak, one day I'll have ribeye, one day I'll have some sirloin burgers. One of my favorites is medium ground beef with beef liver. I'll have that on Mondays and Thursdays. So I'll do a rotation diet, and I'll rotate the different cuts of meat that I consume throughout the week.
That's a really good plan. I like your menu. That agrees well. Yes. So why don't you go into the details now on how your health has specifically improved? So maybe, go into your energy levels, how you're sleeping, and then specifically related to your condition, how long everything took to heal, and share maybe some stories with your doctor experiences, or if you shared how you approached your healing, and if you had any input from the doctors that you saw along the way.
Okay. Well, as I stated, March of 2010 was when I got my official diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. And in the first 6 months of being diagnosed, I was hospitalized 3 separate occasions. And each of them, I was in the hospital for a minimum of 7 days, anywhere from 7 to 10 days. And it got really bad. The very first time that I was diagnosed, for 10 straight days, I could not eat a single thing. And I was basically just on the couch, vomiting, and when I would vomit, because I hadn't eaten or drank anything, it was just dry vomiting, and it was more just mucus coming out than anything else. And when I started doing a paleo/keto approach, I noticed symptoms subsided. So after about 6 months, everything felt absolutely amazing. And during that 6 months, when I was trying to figure out what exactly worked for my body, My gastroenterologist, he was and still believes in the old school methodology when it comes to treating ulcerative colitis. So he was telling me that I needed to avoid eating saturated fats and I needed to eat more whole grains. And then when I did my follow-up colonoscopy in 2011, he ended up going through the results and he said, I have no idea what the hell you're doing, but if I didn't know you had ulcerative colitis, I never would have guessed from these. And in my head, I was thinking I'm doing the exact opposite of what you told me. So most of my diet was, as I stated, meats. And then of that, there was a lot of fat. And of the fat, it was a majority saturated fat that I was consuming. And because I was doing the paleo diet at the time, I was avoiding all grains whatsoever. So I avoided grains, I avoided nightshade vegetables, and in terms of what I was consuming at the time, it was mostly meat, some nuts and seeds. I would do meat and nuts for breakfast, and then meat and some type of vegetable for dinner. And I would rotate my meats. I would do a 5-day rotation. So typically, it would be something like chicken thighs on day 1, something like steak on day 2, organ meats on day 3, some type of wild game meat on day 4, day 5 was a fish day, and then I would repeat the cycle. And that was my experience with the gastroenterologist. And then I had a couple of experiences with the doctors at the hospital when I was admitted. It was either, I can't remember if it was the second or the third time that I was admitted into the hospital, but one of the doctors, my mother had mentioned how I was not eating any gluten and how I was doing the paleo diet, and he was not a believer in it. So at the end of my stay at the hospital, the doctor was very adamant on not letting me leave until I ate a cookie. So he literally went to the cafeteria, got a cookie, gave it to me, and he said, I'm not going to let you leave until you eat this. So I ate it, felt like absolute crap. And luckily it wasn't my family doctor, it was just some random doctor at the hospital. But yeah, that was my experience with that particular doctor. And then after the third time that I was hospitalized, I haven't had any issues since, and I've been in remission ever since late 2010.
Oh, wow, good for you.
Thank you.
What's your favorite cut of meat? Do you have a favorite cut of meat now that you've had a chance?
It really depends on the day. I love ribeye steak and I love bacon wrapped tenderloin steak.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a
filet mignon, bacon wrapped filet mignon. If I had to pick one, I would probably say bacon wrapped filet mignon is my favorite.
Okay, good to know. So I understand you're a holistic coach as well. You're not a carnivore coach, but are you incorporating anything that you've learned from your carnivore diet experience with your clients at all?
The way that I do my coaching with my nutrition clients is I customize it based off of them and their particular needs and what they want. So if somebody comes to me and they are intrigued and want to give the carnivore diet a try, then I'll coach them through it and give them some advice on how exactly to incorporate it, troubleshooting if they have negative reactions. And then for other people, typically what I'll do is to make things a little bit easier to get people to go from the way that they're normally eating right into carnivore could be very, very overwhelming. So what I'll do is I'll gradually kind of baby them into it. So I'll start them off with something like paleo, and then if that's manageable, then try to get them going a little bit higher fat, doing something like a keto diet. And then if keto is manageable for them, then we'll get them to reduce the carbohydrates even more and then go into something like carnivore. And a lot of the people that come to my clinic, they are dealing with a lot of autoimmune conditions. I deal with a lot of people that have digestive issues. So for them, I really focus on trying to minimize carbohydrates and incorporating a lot more healthy fats and good protein sources. And I do have the odd person that will come to me for fat loss. It's not really something that I do often. When I first started between 2004 to 2009, I would deal with a lot more fat loss patients. But now most of the people that come to me, they are coming to me because they have some type of health condition or some type of issue with regard to musculoskeletal dysfunction. So if somebody's coming to me for digestive health or because they have something like one of my patients has rheumatoid arthritis, then I'll incorporate more of a carnivore style. If somebody's coming to me for fat loss, then I'll focus more on little habits rather than completely overhauling their diet. So getting them to drink more water is one thing, getting them to add a little bit of salt to their diet, getting them to incorporate more healthy fats. And I'll pick one thing every month and just have them focus just on that one thing. So if somebody has an absolutely terrible diet and they are just coming to me because they're not seeing any results and they either want to improve their health or lose some fat, then I'll start with just one habit at a time. Whereas if somebody has already followed a particular diet and I know that they're capable of handling more, then for that specific type of person, then I'll go into meal planning and even trying to get them to figure out what exactly works for them, and actually going into a specific diet rather than just focusing on habits. So it really depends on the person who's in front of me and what exactly they're trying to accomplish.
Well, it sounds like you have a wealth of information behind you. Yeah, it's very inspiring. Did you go through an adaptation period at all when you were switching to full carnivore? Meaning, like, did your body go through any problems? Like, I know for me, I definitely had some digestive issues that I had to work my way through with the runs, and it was not fun. So a good 3-4 weeks for me. Yeah, and you never knew when it was going to happen. Yeah. So yeah, I went through that probably about a month after I started. It didn't happen right away. Did you have any issues at all that your body had to adapt to?
I didn't get the first 2 times that I did it, I had absolutely no issues, but I had already been doing paleo/keto for 3 years prior to doing the carnivore diet the first time. So I think my body had already adapted to minimizing the carbohydrates and incorporating more fat and more protein. So in 2013 and 2015, when I did the carnivore diet, I felt absolutely amazing right off the bat, no issues whatsoever. And then when I did it last year in 2020, the first 7 to 8 days, I was getting some diarrhea, and I remember the 8th day was the worst one. And one thing that I'm not sure contributed to it, but I suspect that it did contribute to it, was some of the supplements that I was taking. So pretty much ever since being diagnosed, I was really regimented with taking things like glutamine, D3, zinc, magnesium, fish oil, HCl, digestive enzyme probiotics. Those were my staple supplements. And I noticed that when I ended up going on carnivore again, it was just getting, those first 8 days was getting a lot of diarrhea, and it was gradually building. And I ended up removing all of the supplements. And then when I removed all of the supplements, the next day, no diarrhea whatsoever. So it could have been the carnivore diet, or it could have been the supplements. I'm not really sure which one it was, but I suspect it was the supplements. And the reason that I say that is because just recently, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, I decided to try and start going back on magnesium, because I haven't been taking magnesium ever since I started the carnivore diet. And I started with just 1 pill. And then the next day I noticed that I didn't get any diarrhea or loose stool or anything, but I did notice a little bit of rumblings in my stomach. I upped it to 2 capsules, and then was getting a little bit of loose stool, upped it to 3, still getting it. And then I ended up completely cutting out the magnesium. And when I cut out the magnesium, then the loose stool completely went away. So I suspect that the symptoms that I was experiencing were more from the supplements rather than the actual carnivore diet itself. And in terms of currently, right now, the only supplements that I'm taking vitamin D3, which is something that I've been taking for 11 years now. And same thing with probiotics. Depending on the meal, I'll either take digestive enzymes or HCl. If I'm strictly eating meat, then I'll take just HCl. If I'm consuming some type of dairy, like a pecorino romano cheese or something like that, then I'll incorporate a digestive enzyme instead. And aside from that, electrolytes in my drinking water, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, D3, electrolytes, my probiotics, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and glutamine. And that's pretty much everything that I'm taking right now, which is a lot less than what I was taking. Because when I was doing paleo/keto, I was on 24 different supplements. I was taking zinc, magnesium, D3, electrolytes. I was taking a fiber supplement, a protein powder, and then just a whole bunch of other stuff, selenium, and yeah.
Wow, good for you. Well, Stephen, it was a pleasure to listen to your story, and I'm sure the viewers are really going to take away a lot of information today and learn from your experience. So thank you again for joining us at Revero.
You're welcome.
I hope you have
and actually, one thing that I didn't really get to touch on, I'll just briefly bring it up, but with regard to the seborrheic dermatitis and also the chronic sinusitis, the amount of medication that I was on was also quite high. So with the seborrheic dermatitis, I really started to notice it in 2015, and I was prescribed this corticosteroid cream. And the corticosteroid cream, it's really bad for your skin. You really should not be on it for more than 2 weeks. And from 2015 until 2020, I was on that every single day. I tried getting off, and every time I got off, I would get a flare up and my skin would get really irritated. And I was going through a 90-gram bottle every single 2 weeks.
Wow.
When I started the carnivore diet, within 3 to 4 days, I cut my dose down where literally I was just taking a little dab on my finger and I would put it on areas that were commonly sweaty, so around the groin region, and that was basically the main area that I put it. But I was covered. My face, my torso, the groin area was all covered in seborrheic dermatitis. And then I haven't had to use that medication for a while. And then with the chronic sinusitis, I had this corticosteroid nasal spray that I would do 2 sprays in each nostril 3 times a day. I would do 2 in the morning in the right and left, 2 in the afternoon, 2 in the evening. And now I'm down to 1 spray in each nostril first thing in the morning, and that's all that I need. So in terms of the medication, I ended up going from using 90 grams every 2 weeks of the cream, the corticosteroid cream, to using absolutely none at all. And then I went from using, it was 2 sprays in each nostril 3 times a day to 1 spray just 1 time a day. So the amount of medication that been able to reduce has been incredible.
Yeah, great for you. That's definitely a common theme that a lot of people experience. So I'm really glad to hear that. I had similar experience as well. So that's just what's amazing about this diet. It really helps you in so many ways. Well, thank you again. And thanks again for sharing your story. I'm sure a lot of listeners will take a lot from what you shared today. You have a wealth of information to offer us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Join Revero.health for a 30-day free trial to get access to live Q&A with VIP guests, social community meetings, member discounts, low-carb healthcare providers list, forum, workouts, monthly challenges, early access to podcasts, recipes, carnivore diet guide, fasting guide, shred guide, and much more.